Good afternoon. This is Kavipriya, Assistant Professor, EC Department. Today I am going to deliver a topic modulation. What is modulation? What are all the types of modulation? And what is the need for modulation? So first, what is a modulation? So modulation is a process of changing the parameters of a carrier signal corresponding to the instantaneous values of the modulating signal. So the message signal and the carrier signal is being sent to the modulator. Modulator is one which changes the parameters of the carrier signal. It can be an amplitude, or it can be a frequency, or it can be a phase. So the parameters of the carrier signal is varied in accordance with the message signal. So the output of the modulator is a modulated signal. So it is a process of converting a message signal into the suitable form to transmit over a long distance through the communication channel. So it is necessary because the message signal is being a low frequency signal that cannot be transmitted efficiently over a channel directly. So the process of shifting the baseband signal, that is nothing but a low frequency signal, to passband range or high frequency range, we call that particular process as a modulation. So in modulation process, some characteristics of the high frequency signal is changed in accordance to the information signal. So the high frequency signal is a carrier signal here. So the process of shifting the baseband signal to the baseband frequency range is called demodulation. So first, what is this modulating signal? This is a signal that contains the message to be transmitted from the sender to the receiver. So other name for modulating signal is a message signal. So generally, the message signal is of low frequency or high frequency, and often we call it as a baseband signals. So the message signals are the signal to be transmitted from the sender to the receiver. The frequency of this message signal is generally low. So thus these signals have to undergo this modulation to get correctly transmitted from one location to the other location. And next is a carrier signal. So other signal used in the process of modulation is a carrier signal which has a high frequency. So the high frequency carrier wave can travel more quicker as compared to the baseband signal. So these signal has a specific frequency, amplitude and phase, but it does not contain any information. After modulation, carrier signals are used to transmit the signal to the receiver. Modulated signal is the signal after modulation, we call it as a modulated signal. The signal is a mixture of a carrier and the message signal. So this diagram infers that if a person, first picture refers to the person who throws the paper, but the paper does not reach to the greater heights. Whereas in case of second picture, the person combining the paper with the stone and throwing the paper. So now the paper can reach the long distance. So the stone is a carrier signal and the paper is a message signal. So when we combine this carrier and message signal and when we transmit, it can travel over the long distance. So that is the concept behind the modulation. What is the need for modulation? For practical design of antennas and simultaneous transmission of several signals, and for suitable signal transmission for longer distance and for narrow banding, we go for modulation. And what is this baseband signal? It is a signal, the transmitted signal that has not been undergo any modulation process, or it is demodulated to its original frequency. It can be transmitted over the optical fiber, coaxial fiber and so on. And need for modulation is that for interaction purposes we require modulation. For transfer purposes we require modulation. And for broadcasting purposes we require modulation. And to increase the signal strength we go for modulation. And for wireless communication system we go for modulation. And to prevention of message from mixing with the other signals we go for modulation. So it prevents the interference of message signal from other signal. So if a person sending a message signal through a phone cannot tell such signals as apart, so as they will interfere with each other. So however, by using a carrier signal which has a high frequency, the mixing of signals can be prevented. And for the size of antenna cause, so signal within 20 Hz to 20 kHz frequency range can travel only a few distances. To send a message, the length of the antenna should be quarter wavelength of the used frequency. So modulation is required to increase the frequency of a signal and to enhance its strength to reach the receiver. And what are all the needs of the modulation? As discussed previously, the size of the antenna is get reduced. There is no scope for signal mixing. The communication range is get increased. Multiplexing of signal occurs. Adjustment in the bandwidth are allowed. Improvement in the reception quality. And we have the types of modulation as analog modulation and digital modulation. Under analog we have amplitude, frequency and phase. Under digital we have ASK, FSK and PSK. So amplitude modulation is one. We will be changing the amplitude of the carrier signal in accordance with the input signal. Frequency will be changing the frequency of the carrier signal in accordance with the amplitude of the input signal. In case of phase, we will be changing the phase of the carrier signal in accordance with the amplitude of the modulating signal. So, what is the use of the modulation? So it is one of the most common use of different type of modulation is interconversion of signal from its existing to another form. And digital modulation is used for transmission of digital signals over an analog baseband. Analog modulation is used to transfer the low band signals. Modern modulation techniques are widely used to carry out this FDM. So that's all about the modulation. What is modulation, need for modulation and different types of modulation, and what is the use of modulation. Thank you.